I recall, I think it was a Thanksgiving dinner around the year 2000, and men were pulling me aside because they knew I was a pharmacist, asking me if I could get them Viagra. And I thought, what the heck's going on here?
Viagra increases my sex drive.
Definitely not.
Really?
25% of men have problems with timed intercourse when they didn't have problems with recreational sex.
One of the interesting stories in Viagra is just how it transformed our conversations around men's sexual health and erectile dysfunction.
Viagra gives you dangerously long erections. True or false?
A normal man will have 3 one-hour erections at night, and you have to think of it as the penis sighing to get oxygen, because it takes more energy to keep a penis flaccid or limp than it does to keep it erect.
Tadalafil and sildenafil found that both drugs reduce mortality rates, cardiovascular disease, and dementia risks in patients with erectile dysfunction.
I love it when he uses big words.
You tell me to take one pill and I take 2. Is it going to be bigger and harder and last longer?
If you have an erection problem in your 40s, that's significant. Your chance of dying of a cardiovascular event, stroke or heart attack, is 2.2 times baseline, which is the same as smoking.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talk with Turek, where we talk about men's fertility and sexual health. I'm Rob Clyde. This is Dr. Paul Turek.
How are you, Rob?
I am doing really well this morning. It's going to be a great show today. We're talking about PDE5 inhibitors.
What are those, Rob?
Look, I'm literally dressed for the role today. They're the little blue pill, Viagra. That's what we're talking about.
Oh,
today.
yeah.
Our guest today is Peter Koshland. He is a compounding pharmacist, which sounds really interesting to me. I don't know what they are, so we're going to find out.
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot about that pharmacy business.
And we're going to break some myths.
Yes.
We're going to understand the origin of this little blue pill. And we're going to actually talk about some new scientific finds, papers, and things that are showing that Viagra will really maybe help you with other things in your health. No?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Peter and Paul... that will give us the skinny on everything about the little blue pill. But before we get there, a couple of announcements, if that's okay. Just because this morning, as I was prepping, I looked, and for some reason it popped up, my LinkedIn popped up, and I see this announcement that you're going to be on a reality show called The Valley. Is that right?
Yes, I am, yes.
It's on Peacock. It dropped on April 8th.
The session is called Snip Snip.
Okay, so somebody on The Valley is getting a vasectomy,
Yes.
is what I'm guessing. That's the drop, and you're their guy.
Yeah, they chose me. Yeah, but came from the Valley to Beverly Hills.
How was that's like a big production, right?
It is a big production, lots of people, and pretty funny.
Really?
Characters. Yeah, I mean, not everything goes right for
Sure.
these conversations.
Sure.
And you'll see they cut most of it out, but the conversations about, am I neutered? My statement was, it's just not neutering, because everyone has a cultural feeling that you're losing your testicles when you get a vasectomy.
Sure.
It's a cultural thing, and you're not. I said, it's not that. You're just blocking the flow of sperm. And he kind of cools off, It's like, okay.
It's great. Well, I'm going to go watch it.
Those are important.
I'm going to watch it because you're on it, right? I mean, I'm sure it's a great show, but that's why I'm going to watch it. And you're on a future episode, I believe. Maybe there's a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I think we'll see. We may be doing the procedure.
All right, well, that's
camera.
awesome. Another little thing that happened in the studio, and the reason why we might be a little bit
jumpy
and energetic today is that about 20 minutes ago, Paul was like, "Where's my phone?" And you're getting ready to get on a trip after we shoot today.
As soon as the shoot's over, I'm in the airport going to Scottsdale for the Sperm Society meetings.
Okay.
Of which I'm past president. Can't really not show up for that.
You got to be there.
And I need a phone.
So what do you do? So that's what we were running through all the things. So you left
great.
it, pretty sure you left it in the Uber, right? Was the deal that got you here.
Yep.
We went online. We did the procedure that you do for Uber, like contact the driver. It said, we'll respond within 24 hours. That doesn't help you.
That's 3 flights and 6 Ubers away from now.
Yeah, so my suggestion was when you get there, you go to an Apple store and you just buy another phone and you download it all. Think of the time and the effort, right? And how do you get to the Apple store without a phone? You really learn how much you need your phone, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's more important than a credit card or a condom.
I would say so. Maybe you can at least pull out with the condom, but you can't do anything with the phone. So the good news is I just kept calling his phone, and eventually the Uber driver picked up, And he knew you needed to get on a flight. By the way, he said the next driver is who saw it. The next passenger said, hey, there's a phone back here. And so then he knew you had to get to the airport, so he came back, was a nice guy. And the lesson learned is
you need to be nice to your drivers, because he knew I was headed to the airport and knew what I was on a schedule. And I had a great relationship with him for a 30-minute ride, and I will always do that now.
Man. So, all right. We need to get to the show.
Okay.
All right. Peter's waiting.
That was an embarrassing story, by the way.
Yeah, but it's not embarrassing.
It doesn't happen to
everybody. It happens to everybody.
Yeah, okay.
It's never happened
Alrighty
to me.
Then. Great. Just you.
Just me. All right. Well, most of you know Viagra, or you know it as the little blue pill, but almost none of you know the actual story of how it was discovered. It was an accident. It was a failed heart drug. So PDE5 inhibitor space, it's one of the most searched health topics for men right now all over the internet. Some new scientific papers are coming out recently reframing the science a little bit. Tadalafil and the sildenafil found that both drugs reduce mortality rates, cardiovascular disease, and dementia risks in patients with erectile dysfunction.
I love it when he uses big words.
Thank you. With or without known coronary artery disease, too, which relates to a whole lot of men out there.
There's a whole new realm of medicine surrounding the little blue pill that never existed before.
By the end of the conversation, you will understand why what started as one little blue pill in 1998 has now become an entire category of personalized medicine.
That's right.
Right? So we're going to break some myths along the way as well, like a little new segment. I think we should get into busting myths on this show. I like that. Our guest on the show today is Peter Koshland. He is the CEO of the compound pharmacy, Koshland Pharmacy, which is California-based. Peter graduated from Georgetown University with a chemistry major, a math minor, and earned a PharmD from the University of California at San Francisco School of Pharmacy, where he currently serves as the assistant clinical professor of pharmacy. Peter, welcome to Talk with Turek.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be here. A big fan of the podcast. So,
oh yeah,
being on it is pretty cool.
Well, this is a definite subject that a lot of people have a lot of questions about. They have a lot of assumptions, and I have a feeling you two are going to educate.
We're going to kill this one, Peter.
I'm ready.
All right. So my first question for both of you: just go ahead and walk us through how Viagra happened. Like, where did this?
I'll tell a story quickly.
Please.
And maybe Peter, you can elaborate on details. But when I started in medicine at University of California, San Francisco, and my associate was Tom Liu. And Tom Liu is one of the first authors on the New England Journal paper where it got FDA approved, Viagra, little blue pill, FDA approved, and New England Journal paper on the same week.
Wow.
It was an incredible presentation. But what happened earlier to that was it was to treat cardiac pain, chest pain. And there's nitroglycerin patches we used to use and put them on the heart.
Okay.
And they needed something more oral and maybe quicker or just as quick. And they were testing it all around the world in a clinical trial, and it didn't help chest pain. It was the idea of dilating blood vessels in the heart. But it was mechanistically it would do it, but it didn't work. So they said, all right, failed, give us the drug back. And I was in the San Francisco office, and nobody gave their pills back to Tom Liu. And he's like, what is going on? He said, we got great erections. We're not giving this pill back. So Pfizer, the mother company, said, let's look at this. And bam.
So you guys knew that it was working down there right away?
That's what was the accident, which was we couldn't get the pills back from the patients who were in the trial. And you could easily tell the controls from the patients who got the drug.
Yeah.
Because we got all the placebos back, but didn't get any of the active pills back. Because these guys, these are men with cardiac histories, and those are the ones that, and you'll see how this story evolves. It's a big full circle, but that's the story of it. I don't know. Maybe you know more about FDA and.
It's interesting to hear that you've actually had firsthand experience with it, because I've heard that story, and it's actually striking because it's very unusual for patients not to give the drugs back after a failed trial. So I think that's probably what got Pfizer's attention, that something is going on here. We should look at this more closely. But wow, you had firsthand experience with that, because I've heard that story. So now we know it's true.
It's true, and it's interesting that this pill works best in cardiac patients, the patients with heart disease. And the story that we're going to tell today is that it helps your erection, and heart disease is predicted by an erection problem. So the penis and the heart are linked in, you think more hormonally they might be, right?
Sure.
Because of sex, but they're linked in lots of ways, and including longevity, and it's an amazing story that's evolving, and you're in the middle of it, Peter.
That's right. From my perspective, it just sounds like blood flow, cardiovascular, right? And this is directing it down there as opposed to here. Or does it actually working up here? They just couldn't feel
All
it.
over.
Lots of those good questions. One question is, what were men doing before Viagra to help
Well, I
with
don't know.
erectile
Were you
dysfunction?
making any drugs for them before that?
No, not really. I mean, it was really not even talked about, I don't think, that much. I mean, there were things out there, devices, and we'll talk a little bit about some compounded options that we do for patients who don't respond to the Viagra drugs that were available, but I don't think it was widely prescribed like it is now. And I think one of the interesting stories in Viagra is just how it transformed our conversations around men's sexual health and erectile dysfunction and brought it much more prominently into people's consciousness so that they would seek treatment. So even some of the treatments that we do now that were available before, I think are much more widely used because men are more comfortable speaking about it with their doctor.
I mean, it was largely, as a clinician, you would say, well, it's in your head, or, oh, this happens with age. And there were erection devices, vacuum erection devices. There was the injectable era that started a little bit earlier, and that was a wild story. Scott stood at the American Urology Association, and there's medications you can inject in your penis that only act locally and give you an erection whether you like it or not. They're called trimix, bimix. And he stood at the podium as the developer of prostaglandin, and he gave a lecture on how this can help you get an erection. And then he stood away from the podium, and he dropped his pants, he injected his penis. He went back to the podium, continued to talk. 5 minutes later, he stepped aside. He had this huge erection. If you can imagine a situation where you've never had an erection or you could never get one, it would be in front of 5,000 people, right?
Holy.
And then he continued, and he proved to everybody that this works. Bradley
That
Scott.
is awesome. Where is that on YouTube? I got to find that. Was anybody
That'll never be
filming?
done in a meeting again,
Holy
right?
smokes.
That was
Did you
wild.
know about this story?
I had not heard that. That is,
So that was out there. That was out there around this time when Viagra came out, but it's an injection every time you want, and it causes priapism, which is prolonged erections, and very invasive, right? So that's really it.
Definitely one of the now popular side effects of Viagra that they say could, if you have an erection lasting more than 4 hours, consult your physician right away, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I've memorized that from another thing
Super Bowl.
that this has revolutionized is our infomercials, and the whole, how we tell stories around pharma was really kicked off by Viagra and these,
A lot. So many fronts.
We have Bob Dole to thank for him kind of putting a face on it at that time too, and even changing it from impotence to erectile dysfunction, I believe, kind of happened around the same time as well. So a rebranding, a remarketing is all because of...
Medically, it's put our foot in the door to men's health like nothing ever has. Because men are now showing up, and we haven't gone into the science, but it's a biomarker of health, cardiovascular health, and the papers that are coming out, the science have been evolving for about 10 or 15 years, and it's amazing what's happening. If you talk about longevity, you should be on this pill. It's the new aspirin.
Yeah, we've kind of flipped it around where, like, I'm going to maybe start thinking about taking Viagra for my overall coronary health and not for my erectile dysfunction. Is that what you're saying? Is there some... It's
Maybe.
actually going to keep you healthy? It's almost like to be determined.
Preventative medicine. Yeah.
There's been, like, hot drugs over the decades, right? Right now, it's the GLP-1s, right? The Ozempics and things. That's like the hot drug. And this is what the hot drug was and when? This was 90s?
early 2000s. Yeah, I would say early 2000s. And as a pharmacist, it's always striking to me how a drug breaks through into the mainstream, because we've got thousands of drugs that we talk about that most people can't even pronounce. And I recall, I think it was a Thanksgiving dinner around the year 2000, and men were pulling me aside because they knew I was a pharmacist, asking me if I could get them Viagra. And I thought, what the heck's going on here? And so that was a very telling moment that, like, oh, this drug is different. This drug has hit the public consciousness in a way that most drugs don't. Kind of similar to the GLP-1s now, but in its own lane. So yeah, it was a very, very big deal at the time. I kind of now I think we kind of just, Viagra's been around for so long, we just kind of, it's part of the, was on the shelf and everyone knows about it. But at the time, it was a big deal.
What's another drug that's done that? Which the GLPs is an example, the most recent. Is there anything else between the two?
I think of like in the 80s, Prozac kind of was like that too. I remember that, books were being written, the societal effects of the drug. Once a drug kind of enters into a larger conversation about how we live and how society is put together, I think then it's that blockbuster. And it probably happens once every 10 or 20 years. Like it doesn't happen frequently. And so it was fun to reflect back on Viagra and that time too, because it's so taken for granted now. But the direct to consumer advertising had just been legalized just right before it became approved in 1997, and the drug was approved in 1998. And Pfizer really did an incredible marketing job with that drug. I mean, they changed the way we thought about the condition of erectile dysfunction. They brought Bob Dole in, and I wonder if it would have been the same if they hadn't had the ability to really frame the condition and the debate around what it means to take a drug like Viagra. So it was kind of a culmination of lots of factors that all happened right around that same time. I thought of one other thing that happened too, was just kind of the internet was just becoming very mainstream, and it was also a lot of counterfeit, illegal sales, a lot of craziness because people just wanted the drug so badly. So people, bad actors were out there trying to take advantage of that high demand for the therapy.
So tell us a little about direct-to-consumer marketing. What's that movement? What changed?
So before 1997, and again, it's kind of hard to remember these times because it was a while ago, but you really weren't allowed to advertise drugs to the consumers. There were no commercials at the Super Bowl for all these, it's like, feels like that's all we see now on TV or on YouTube or something like that. But in 1997, they changed their policy around that, and drug manufacturers were allowed to advertise or market to consumers, even though a consumer technically can't just go and buy the drug. You still have to get a prescription for it. And of course, some of the provisions of that also said you also have to mention all the side effects as part of the ad. So that's when at the end of the ad, you hear all these, this long list of things. That's all part of those provisions.
It's 5 seconds of what the drug does and 25 seconds of the side effects. You can die. You can get
erectile if you have an erection longer than 4 hours.
Well, for other drugs though, it's enormous. Like you could have a stroke. It's like what? But that's what they have to do to get it to advertise it. But compounders, we haven't gone to that difference. That's for pharma grade drugs, right?
Yeah. So compounding, it's really like what we do is more of a prescription for an individual patient. I mean, we're not manufacturing a drug. In fact, most of the stuff we do is actually made after we get the prescription in for an individual. So it's very, very customized. And the stuff we do is really more related to, somebody needs something that's not available commercially. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about how we compound with the PDE5 drugs like the Viagras and the tadalafils and the sildenafils. And kind of add some improvements in terms of how they absorb into the body, things like that. But all the stuff we're doing it's very boutique. It's very one-off for an individual patient.
Before we even get down to there, because we're going to talk some myths, but the other industry that is, and we've talked about it on the show for good or bad, that was revolutionized and changed is the porn industry. I've heard that over and over again. Like I've seen a documentary where they're like, and then Viagra happened, and then the industry totally changed. Is that?
I don't know, Rob. Maybe you know more than I do.
Well, I mean, I've heard them
Makes
talk
sense.
about it.
Yeah.
You're the director.
That's who's the one. I mean,
You're in Southern California.
That's right. Well, and again, it goes to what we talk about, like all the TV branding and everything. Now we have all these different companies, different brands that can get you this medicine. And the difference between, we're saying Viagra a lot, it was the OG, but like there's Cialis, and then you go into the brands, whether it's Hims or...
Right. So we need to sort that out with Peter.
Exactly. I don't understand the difference between the two and all that stuff.
It's a mess.
But let's go, so let's start with some Mythbusters. Okay, that our audience may or
You
may
ready,
not
Peter,
have done.
for Mythbusters?
Right.
So I'm going to start with this one. Viagra gives you dangerously long erections. True or false?
Basically false.
Why?
Well, it's been advertised like on Super Bowl ads as causing priapism or prolonged erections, but it only works if you will the erection. So it's a voluntary erection only. If you don't will it, you don't get it. If you will it to go away, it goes away. So I have never in my 30 years have ever seen a man come in with priapism from Viagra.
Okay. Myth number 2. Here we go. Viagra is addictive. Once you use it, you will need it forever. Once you do it, you'll never go back. Peter? What do you think?
I mean, it's a myth. It's a very effective drug. So, I mean, there's possibility that you want to continue to use it because it's working so well, but it's not addictive or habit forming in any way, shape, or form. So I think that would be considered a myth.
Considered a myth, but with an asterisk that says, but if it
people
works
like
for
it.
you and they like it, then you're not going to stop doing it. It's like kind of like I would say chiropractors are the same way. Like they kind of have this stigma of like once you do it, then they get you and you have to keep doing it. All right. Myth number 3, Viagra increases my sex drive.
Definitely not.
Oh, really?
So you
I
need
would've
to
said
have
yes.
an arousal or a sex drive to have an erection. So it doesn't give you that. There are sex drive pills for women, but there are none for men. Viagra does not do that.
Yeah, the way I think of it with Viagra is it's more, we'll talk maybe a little bit how it works, but it's like it allows when the desire is there for the erection to happen better. It opens the door wider for the blood flow to come in, but it doesn't make the blood flow come in. It just allows that to happen better. So I think that's definitely not true. And there isn't. I mean, another myth, and we're not really going to go into it in this, is that testosterone increases sex drive, which is also not true.
The asterisk for that myth is that if you know you're getting a good erection, your sex drive will improve for the next event.
Yeah, so psychologically.
Yeah, circumstantially.
Absolutely. What happens if a woman takes Viagra or any of these pills?
So I have some experience with that, but I would say what we've learned is that it's a very new science, but we've learned that some women respond with better erections, clitoral erections.
Okay.
And their sexual function improves. So it has taught the community of sexual health physicians that there is a component in female sexual dysfunction that is erectile in nature. And that's new.
Got it.
So it taught the community of physicians that women, so first of all, it brought up the whole idea of female sexual dysfunction and the inability to climax. A lot of it can be organic and can be anatomical, and it can be clitoral. Not all of it, but that was really important. So that is blowing apart.
And good for their heart, right?
I don't think we know that.
We don't know that? Oh, okay.
We do compound some topical creams for women that include a host of drugs. One of them is sildenafil, oftentimes, that women apply to the clitoris for increased sensitization. So it's used in that capacity in compounding as part of it's one of the ingredients. It's not used alone. So its effect is probably additive, but not the core effect.
And it's interesting that the anatomy of the clitoral anatomy and the erectile function in women, all that really got going after it was given to women to say, oh my God, we're helping women too. How is that working? It's an analogous issue, right? Clitoral erections.
But the science hasn't been studied yet about the effect of their cardiovascular health.
I don't
think
those trials have been done on women taking.
We'll get to it, guys. What are you talking about? Let's go.
That would be the whole population to help, right?
That's what I'm saying. If it's
But I think the first realization is that women's sexual dysfunction exists. It's actually pretty common, almost as common as men, and some of it is anatomical, and it can be helped with these pills.
There's an explosion of women's sexual health interest right now. I mean, it's going crazy. I mean, women on testosterone, women on these creams I talked about, women taking oxytocin nasal spray to increase orgasms. So it's kind of the era that Viagra was 25 years ago for women right now.
All right, I think I know the answer to this one. Viagra is bad for your heart. We just talked about it. I would say it sounds like it's going to be good for my heart.
I think Viagra is the new aspirin. I think it's going to be a singular experience for longevity, prevention of, we call them cardiac events, strokes. Yeah. It's an amazing science evolving.
Yeah, the research is really there. I think it just hasn't become kind of a standard practice, but with the strength of what's out there showing benefits, I mean, it seems like it's a matter of time before we're going to have conversations about these drugs for cardiovascular risk management. So yeah, it's very promising.
I'm telling you, before this conversation, I would have said it's not good. It'll give me a heart attack.
Well, there's a warning with these pills that if you take it with nitrates, which are for chest pain, you can have a reaction and drop your blood pressure and have a heart attack.
Okay.
So there are definite side effects and warnings, and that's what you're probably reflecting on.
Okay. And get yourself a good doctor and compound pharmacist. That's what we're going to talk about, and kind of dial in your own custom health. I love it. Okay. Another myth. Viagra hurts your eyes. Is that? I hadn't heard that one. How would it hurt your eyes? Does it?
I'm going to say that's a myth. I mean, if you look at the laundry list of side effects that almost every drug has, there is an extraordinarily rare side effect with some retinal damage. Paul, you probably know more about this than I do, but I know that when they looked more closely at kind of a subset of patients who had that side effect, it wasn't really related to the drug so much as underlying conditions.
Yeah, there were some reports of, I think it was Viagra or sildenafil, in diabetics causing NION, which is arteriopathy in the eye, and blindness, and also deafness. And so people, as this it came out in the 2000s, everyone thought, well, it's God's wrath. People want their erections, but there's a price to it, right? So you're going to go blind, and you're not going to be able to hear. So there was reports from ENT, ear, nose, and throat literature on this in diabetics, and it seemed alarmingly high, the rate of these problems. But then I think the Harvard newsletter, the medical letter at Harvard, did a study where they normalized the incidence or the rate of finding this in diabetics who take it. And if you look over sort of 10 million people, and you look at those rates, it was actually what we call protective. It appeared that these rates were lower than the average diabetic getting these anyway.
Interesting. It's like Willy Wonka when the girl turns into the blueberry. Like you start to see that your tinted vision is blue. Maybe, I don't know.
Viagra does have a known side effect in a small number of patients where people get like some tinted vision. But
Okay.
It's transient and not dangerous. So
All right.
Yeah, and the other one that people don't know about is you have erectile tissue in your penis that's used for this, but the same receptors are in your nose. So all this class of drugs will cause nasal congestion. And because you could actually transplant nasal tissue, erectile tissue into your penis. This is the same tissue.
Get out.
It's wild. So a lot of people, dose dependent, will get nasal congestion when they take the pill and wonder what's going on.
Moving on to the next myth.
Okay.
Myth. Erectile dysfunction is just a psychological problem or an inevitable part of aging.
Erectile dysfunction can be psychological.
Okay.
But not necessarily, and it's awful if you assume that's the case, because there's a whole body of literature on the science of the heart, and so you would look for medical problems in men. So I hired a nurse practitioner who's in general medicine to handle these patients, because when you have an erection problem, it can be a sign of metabolic or hormonal health problems, and you should go there. It's the foot in the door to take care of these men.
And so if you then deduced that there was no physical issue, then would you say there's something in his head that's causing this? And you're saying...
Well, we don't use in your head anymore. We say it could be stress-related or psychological, et cetera. But you could usually figure that out. And I like to dose men with these drugs, because if their erections normalize, then we know it's probably something like stress. And then we say, okay, let's work on the stress.
Answer the part, though, that it's that an inevitable part of aging.
No question, there's age-related changes to erections. The Massachusetts male aging study showed that you can basically subtract 10 from someone's age. So 54 minus 10 is 44. So probably 40% of men your age will have an erection problem.
Wow.
It's very common.
Okay.
Now, the severity of it differs, right? Because you have different fundamentals. It's not all heart disease at that point.
Right.
But I have patients coming in at 30 years old who want emergency visits, and because they have an erection problem and they couldn't get their erection last night, and say, I got to see you today. I was like, okay. What's going on? I said, I lost my erection for the first time. It's like, welcome to humanity. So the guy's traveling 500,000 miles a year. He has a startup going. He's trying to raise money. He's not sleeping. and he lost his erection. I said, welcome to the human race.
So, but you can get him a pill for that. That's what
But
we're
I'd like
telling
to work on the stress. It's like, this is the Da Vinci said that the penis has a mind of its own, and it responds to stress very differently than you think your mind does. And I want them to work on that, because that's a longevity play.
Anecdotally, I could take that to a whole different place, by the way. All right. Next myth. Viagra works instantly.
No, I mean, it takes time to get into your system for sure. So, I mean, Viagra is, I think there's a newer, shorter acting one that's out, but Viagra probably works within 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. So you have to have a little bit of planning. I mean, some of the compounded stuff we do, we could talk a little bit about kind of sublingual absorption, kind of getting it kind of not have to go through the gut to get into the system. That might work a little bit faster. But yeah, not instant. And certainly a drug like Cialis or the tadalafil, it takes many hours actually for it to kind of reach peak blood level.
If it doesn't work the first time, it's not going to work for you, period.
That's false.
Okay.
I mean, you should definitely trial it a couple of times.
Okay.
Right. And then you should also think about not only on-demand erections, but are morning erections improved? So there's morning wood that men have. That's a sign of a good erectile health. So if that is better, and nighttime erections you normally don't know about, but you have them. Nocturnal erections, if those are improved, or just spontaneous erections, that's all a sign of stuff. But you would have to give it a couple of tries. There are ways to tell whether someone's erection problem is sort of non-organic or psychological or stress-related, because they'll still usually have morning erections. And morning erections aren't morning wood is not really all or none. It's not, oh, I can't use it. I get it, but I can't use it. That's okay. If you get something at some point, that's a morning erection, because it depends on lots of things. Okay. And nocturnal erections at night, a normal man will have 3 1-hour erections at night, and you have to think of it as the penis sighing to get oxygen, because it takes more energy to keep a penis flaccid or limp than it does to keep it erect, because the blood vessels are tightened when it's flaccid with low blood flow, and when you relax it, so it's literally sighing to get like taking a big breath at night.
All right, myth. If I take more, it'll work better. So if you tell me to take 1 pill and I take 2, is it going to be bigger and harder and last longer?
Definitely a myth. I mean, there are different dosage levels that you can try, but above a certain amount, all you're going to do is get more side effects. So more is not necessarily better with these drugs.
So side effects go up with dosing, and there is a dose-dependent response, but once you get to a certain level, it levels off, and there's no benefit.
Okay.
What do PD5 medications, the blue pills, do for men with normal erections?
Good question.
I would say not much, except if you already have normal erections, you're taking it recreationally. What you'll find is that the refractory period from the erection, so normally you have an erection, if you ejaculate, your erection falls for a refractory period amount of time, can be 5 minutes to 30 minutes, and then you're able to get another erection. That refractory period can go away. It'll give you the erection through it.
Really?
So that's kind of what people like. So the nervous systems differ between erection and ejaculation. They have to shift gears, so you have to turn it off. So the reflex is inactive, the ejaculation reflex. You won't be able to ejaculate for a certain amount of time, but you can keep the erection.
People should be like...
It blows through the refractory period and keeps your erection hard,
right. Well,
when it would normally fall after orgasm.
Doctors can prescribe that more recreationally.
So recreational use, I would say, here's an example. I have a population of men who have normal erections with unscheduled or recreational sex, but when it comes down to timed intercourse for having a child, they may be tired, right? They had a big day, they had a deadline, and the partner is like, hey, my kit turned color, we need to have sex tonight, and I'm like, I'm really tired. I'll prescribe it. 25% of men have problems with timed intercourse when they didn't have problems with recreational sex. And so I find it useful there.
It makes perfect sense. And it kind of leads into this next one, which is Viagra is only for older men. Peter?
False.
Right.
Certainly.
False.
All right. Viagra will hurt your fertility if you're trying to conceive.
So there's no evidence that Viagra will hurt your fertility. I get this question a lot from the partners of men who think taking this pill, it'll somehow get into their system or cause a problem, and it doesn't do that. So it's probably a pro-fertility supplement for men.
Are you prescribing it for men with fertility issues?
As we spoke, yes. So a substantial number of men, 25%, who have no trouble with recreational sex when it comes to scheduled sex for timed intercourse for fertility, they'll have an issue and they can't perform on demand, and this really helps them.
I'll just add quickly, they're really about the kind of mechanics. They facilitate the mechanics of an erection. They're very specific to that. So I think that's kind of why most of these things are false. They don't really go outside their lane in respect. So I think that's kind of a key feature of these drugs, is that they're very specific to allowing the blood flow into the penis. That's what they do. So beyond that, it's not a lot of other effects. Of course, other places in the body, it's also relaxing smooth muscle. So we've talked about nasal congestion and cardiovascular benefits, but in the penis, it's specifically sticking to that one function.
Yeah, we're getting a theme that these are all false, but that's kind of the point. Viagra protects against STIs.
No, STDs and sexually transmitted diseases are not prevented or ameliorated or mitigated against with Viagra. It's just the erection, as Peter said. It's just the mechanics of the erection.
Got it. A couple more. Grapefruit juice is fine to have with Viagra. Where does that come from? You can't drink grapefruit juice, Peter?
Well, it's grapefruit juice, as we know. Anybody who's on a host of drugs knows that grapefruit juice interacts with a lot of drugs because it blocks some of the metabolism of a lot of drugs, some very common liver pathways, and Viagra and this class of medications also gets metabolized through those same pathways. So what grapefruit can do is actually increase the blood levels of these drugs, increasing side effects, et cetera. So they typically recommend just avoiding grapefruit juice. I don't think people really drink grapefruit juice like they used to anyway.
Maybe in a mixed drink.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's right.
The sweet cocktail, a grapefruit juice cocktail with a little vodka. That's pretty good.
You know?
This one's interesting. Viagra can enhance athletic performance.
That's interesting. And the answer is maybe.
Okay.
So it's been given to athletes because it does have the blood flow, increase in blood flow in the penis can be elsewhere in the body. And there's an emerging evidence that a lot of competitive athletes are using it for muscle blood flow. Non-FDA approved indications. Peter, do you know more about that?
No, I don't. But I'm also curious because I know it's also used kind of for like high altitude sickness, things like that. So athletes operating at high altitude, I'm just curious if you've heard about it being used in those areas. I haven't, but it seems like there's some theoretical probabilities that it could be beneficial.
Right, and it's the blood flow issue, and I don't think it's been shown to increase cardiac performance, but blood flow and clearing metabolites from muscle, it's being used.
Now, remember the story that was out that the Olympic ski jumpers were injecting themselves for the little extra suit, right? But so would you say, so if
not the same, but
not the same, I get it, but can you take Viagra if you're an Olympic athlete, or will that be
oh geez, I don't know if it's a banned substance.
Right,
I don't
that's
think
what
so.
I'm getting at.
I don't think so.
You don't think it's banned? What do you think, Peter?
I don't think it is. I haven't heard that.
All right, two more fun ones. Bonus myths, so to speak.
Bonus.
Viagra helps cut flowers stay upright longer.
I haven't heard that, but it sounds like it's true.
Okay.
Because the energy molecules in plants is the cyclic GMPs is also the energy molecule in the penis. So it's a similar mechanism, but it's expensive to put Viagra in your plant water.
Dude, science is cool. Viagra has been credited with saving endangered species. Guys?
I think that's true. Yeah.
How so?
I think people don't take penises off of animals and dry them out. I think people don't use rhino horns or use tusks or antlers.
These are like virility kind of
so the
myths
traditional communities have their own concoctions for corny goat weed or whatever to use, and a lot of it involve bones and parts of animals, monkeys, etc. So I think it's saved a couple of animals' lives.
Wow.
Harvesting them in traditional ways.
All right. Let's talk more about how PDE5s work. We've alluded to it, but let's go right to it. Peter, you're the pharmacist. Explain what PDE5s actually do and how inhibiting works.
Is it accurate to say that these pills are coffee for the penis?
I've heard you say that. I think that's hilarious, that analogy. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Basically, we talked a little bit about how we want the smooth muscle relaxation so blood flow can come into the penis. And so what the PDE5 inhibitors really do is just allow the endogenous and the natural smooth muscle relaxants that are being created to stick around longer. It's blocking their breakdown. So, I mean, it's very simple in that regard. So, yeah, it's like coffee for the penis. There you go.
Coffee works by, it blocks the breakdown of ATP,
Okay.
which is the energy molecule for the body. So you drink coffee, you make ATP, it sticks around longer because it blocks the breakdown. So the energy molecule in the penis is cyclic GMP, which is similar to ATP, and this blocks the breakdown of that one, so it leaves more energy molecules in the penis. So you have to have the natural stimulation to get it, and then you put out the cyclic GMP, and it sticks around longer, and it gives you a longer erection. It's a really beautiful mechanism.
How does it get directed to the penis? That was the accident? That was the way they just decided to put the thing together in the first place? It didn't work here, but it worked right there and only there? Or go ahead.
It works everywhere. It's just the penis seems to be particularly responsive to this drug. I think that's the accurate way to say it. And I think also the fact that it works everywhere is why we're seeing some of these cardiovascular benefits as well. So circulating throughout the whole body, the penis just has a very strong affinity for this PDE5 inhibition.
There's several categories of phosphodiesterase inhibitors and phosphodiesterases that do this job. Okay. There's like 11 categories, and type 5 is the one in the penis. It's also in the nose. It's also elsewhere, and so it works in specific organs at higher concentrations.
What about food and alcohol? So I've heard that if I have a big meal or too much to drink, is it going to affect my Viagra therapy?
Yes, definitely will. Yeah, I mean, food will delay its absorption, so it'll slow down its onset. Alcohol tends to reduce its effectiveness. Both of those things are things to watch out for.
I mean, it seems to make sense pretty logically too. If I have a big meal before I go to bed, it makes me snore more. It feels like it has to do with just congesting myself up and overall bad health. And
I have a lot of patients who start these pills maybe online or get them somewhere, and they come in with an erection problem. They say the pills don't work, and I say, well, how did you take it? And they're taking sildenafil, the Viagra, and they take it. They're at the dinner. It's going to happen. They get a vibe. They're having dinner, a big fatty meal. They take the pill, and it didn't work. They had 4 to 6 hours, right? And I was like, no, you have to have an empty stomach. Really, you have to have an empty stomach for 2 hours if you're going to have that work for you, because of what he said of the reabsorption. It's slowly absorbed, and sometimes it doesn't get absorbed.
All right. I want to talk about compounding the pharmacy, the drugs here, because I was gonna ask, well, what's the difference between Viagra and Cialis and some of these different, there's timing differences, one lasts longer, whatever they are, and that just might lead into Peter putting customized Viagra together for me, or if he's picking Cialis. Is that a doctor's recommendation, or is that Peter's?
Yeah, I think the conversation should be, the FDA-approved drugs have certain doses and certain amounts, and they're highly regulated, and that's how they got approved. And compounders can do kind of whatever they want. So I really admire Peter Koshland because he's responsible and he does good compounding, and it's not risky. They're not regulated the same way. So we should talk about the fact that I don't know how much of these drugs off patent are now compounded, but it's probably half of the market. And why does compounding matter so much in that market when you're walking away from FDA approval?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that half is probably coming from telehealth companies that are promoting these as a specific vertical for their business model to get patients into their programs. So I think some of that for them is a cost issue. I think we don't think of it that way. Like for me, the way we practice is like I only dispense a medication that's compounded over an FDA-approved drug as if there's real value in something customized for a patient. I will say for a drug like Viagra, a sublingual dosage form tends to have some real advantages because it tends to absorb much faster into the bloodstream. Some of that drug, when we stick it under the tongue and we kind of let it sit there and diffuse it straight through the gums into the bloodstream, we get blood levels much more quickly. So it does improve the onset. And I think, just less liver metabolism, less waiting for it to get through the GI system, et cetera. So I think there's some real advantages in some ways for that type of drug that's kind of on demand to be compounded. So I mean, it's not to say that it's all just an economic issue. There are some reasons to do a compounded version.
Compounders, unlike FDA approved pharma drugs, can play with the medication, right? You can play with the delivery system, you can play with the dosing. But I remember when it first came off patent and people are doing, knockoffs of, say, a Viagra, I saw a published study where only 47% of the active ingredient in the standard pill was present in the compounding. So there's a lot of fidgeting going on, and that's why I don't trust compounders, because you don't know what you're getting sometimes, and it's not regulated.
Yeah, certainly not the same way an FDA-approved drug is. And we really pride ourselves on having very, very high quality assurance processes. But one thing I always have to tell either patients who are new to compounding or physicians who haven't worked with a compounder who are skeptical, every compounder does things a little differently. And it's really up to the compounding pharmacy to build in robust quality assurance processes to make sure that it's as good as an FDA-approved drug in terms of its potency, its quality, that's going to deliver the therapeutic intent of the medication. That takes a big investment, let's put it that way. You don't want the cheapest compound, because if it's cheap, that means they're not doing some of the things that you need to do to have a robust quality assurance program, including for us, sending a lot of finished products out for third-party testing to make sure that, to your point, Paul, we're not in that 47% that didn't actually even have the right amount of drug in it. We need to make sure it's always correct, always within a very acceptable tolerance of what's on the label. So we have a lot of educating to do, and I contend that a compounding pharmacy can produce a very high quality medication if they have that dedication to quality assurance, but it's kind of up to the patient and the physician to vet the pharmacy and make sure that that individual facility is living up to the standards that they expect for their medications for their patients. And so it puts a little bit more onus on the patient and the practitioner to do that.
I'm not a big fan of compounding pharmacies because of the lack of regulation, but I'm a very big fan of Peter Koshland's pharmacy exactly because of all the quality control he does. And when you give it to the patient, they get a great response. And I don't know how patients would go through that process and figure it out, especially online. If it's compounded online, and we could talk about that whole problem.
Just from the everyman's perspective, I had no idea that doctors and pharmacists could make drugs that aren't FDA approved, and I could get them. Didn't know that that's what compounding was. Number two, are you saying that some of these brands out there that are online that are advertising for hair loss and things that are testosterone driven are also compounding their pills with Viagra so that it works for both? It's just a delivery system and all in one. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
I think to a large extent that's true. I mean, I think every telehealth companies probably has a different model. Some are using brand name drugs. They're just sending you the brand name drugs. Some are having things compounded. I guess if you're using a telehealth company and you don't know, you just have to trust that that company has done the due diligence on either their own facility, because some of them have their own pharmacies and some of them contract with pharmacies. We don't work with a lot of telehealth ourselves. We can get into that. I like working with doctors like Paul, who do a different type of dispensing and medication evaluation before they prescribe these things. But you're trusting that those telehealth companies are doing the vetting for you. And I would be wary of very low cost, because you're sacrificing something when you're getting something inexpensive, especially if it's compounded.
Sure, you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, and these
Yeah.
mixtures, these combo pills that are coming out for hair and erections and maybe early ejaculation and things like that, they've never been studied in that fashion. The interactions have never been studied. They're just put together and take it, and they may talk about the side effects of each of them. I don't even know if a physician is prescribing them half the time. So they're untested, essentially. They're untested.
What we need to get to is a place where you guys are having kind of a one-on-one consultation with me as the third triangle. You're saying, okay, I've done all the doctor stuff, right? And I am determining that a little bit of Viagra will do it. And then Peter says, well, cool, if I can mix it with this to help the delivery, or you mentioned this, what's it called that you put under your tongue instead of?
The sublingual troche, we call it. Yeah.
Troche?
Lifesaver.
Okay, so right, you're just saying
Truly a lifesaver.
but that gives me peace to know. I feel like I have two professional experts that believe in science and not just a buck, that they're going to create a compound for me that is going to help me. So that I have a lot of trust in, because I went and I sat in your office and I did that.
You said something that really was so right on, and we talk about it all the time in our industry. We call it the triad. It's the pharmacist, the physician, and the patient in a triangle. And I always say at the center of that triangle is good outcomes. And so we all get together when there's a robust communication between the three of us. We can do amazing things. And I think that's really the key to our success.
That is definitely true in my practice.
And so do I have a personal compound specialist? I'm finding out about Peter through you. Is that the only way I find out about you, Peter, or how does it work?
I think that's probably true. I mean, we try to introduce ourselves to physicians like Paul, who value what we do and understands the value of quality. And actually, you being skeptical of compounding is like, that's what we want to hear, kind of, because we want to kind of say, hey, there is a value if we do it the right way to adding more options to your practice. So yeah, I think having, if you've discovered us and your doctor doesn't know about us, we would like to get introduced to your doctor, because we want them to understand that we exist and that you can feel confident in working with a pharmacy like ours. And I'm not trying to say I'm the only one. I mean, there's other good pharmacies around.
Sure.
But it is part of that triad too. I think a lot of the hesitancy comes from just physicians not understanding, that pharmacies like ours can overcome that skepticism around quality, around evidence-based. We're not going to recommend a formulation that we don't think has good, solid evidence and safety behind it. And that's also part of it. So being a partner with the physician and helping, we're pharmacists, we're drug experts. We can bring that expertise to the physician. They can utilize that for their decision-making. And then we kind of make a good decision together with you and consult. So we just think we expand options for patients.
One example of what Peter was talking about is he and I got together, and testosterone supplementation was done with gels, and there's injections and gels, and men like the gels. You apply them on your shoulders like suntan lotion, and it can transfer to someone else.
Yeah.
Injections are hard, and so on. But transference, if they have little kids or something, and the little kid grows a mustache, okay, they got right. So who touched that towel? Did you touch that towel? Because I just used that towel, and I had my. So it gets complicated. So we developed an underarm deodorant testosterone.
Okay.
And I told him what the need was, and he came up with an atrogel combination that we prescribe. It's called Tureksterone, and it's so cool because patients rub it under their arms and use it as a deodorant. And so my question is, would it work? And he said it should, because this is the vehicle we're using. And I measured levels, and these guys respond beautifully. And that's an example of personalized medicine. Yeah. And I think, everyone needs to know that FDA approved drugs are the same, and there's a quality control, but compounders are not. And the first question for a patient is this pharma grade or is this compounded? If the answer is compounded, like the online stuff, then you have to start asking questions.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to find much data.
That's why we're doing this show, guys. I happen to have access to this guy and now this guy, and they can help us understand the importance of what's available to us and then what might have some questionable outcomes. Are there any, you may or may not know, but are there side effects that people are hearing of anything that people that are taking some of these more branded compounds are getting, and then it could be a risk for them?
There could certainly be risk, because if the interviewer or the provider doesn't really go into what their history is and what other medications they're on, there can be dramatic problems with side effects and complications. But I would say more commonly, compounded medications don't work as well.
That's a pretty good effect. What do you think, Peter?
I think if you don't know where you're getting it from and they don't have robust quality assurance, I mean, even just how we source our chemicals, you talk about FDA, pharmaceutical quality. I mean, just the chemicals themselves. I can buy the same sildenafil that pharma uses in their tablets, or I can buy a cheaper version and hope that it's just as good. And so, I mean, even at that level, how you source things is really important in terms of the quality assurance. And if we're paying attention to it and we kind of dedicate ourselves to that, that plus many other areas of how we put together the compound, then we can feel confident in saying, yeah, your patient is going to get a high quality medication from us that's customized for them. But I mean, not everyone's doing that. So
yeah, you're relying on me to answer the questions, right? That's scary.
Right. You shouldn't have to do that. And even the physician shouldn't have to. This is the pharmacist's job to do the work that they're supposed to do, because we all have a role here. So, and the idea is for us is like, if we want to have good outcomes, and that's really, I mean, if you're going to get into medicine, you should be thinking about helping patients with their health, improving their health. And certainly in this area, it's a big deal for patients. And so there's no way to have that value and cut corners on quality. So that follows suit from an intention to really do the best we can for our patients.
Peter, what percent do you think, devil in the details, what percent do you of the online PDE5 inhibitors are compounded versus pharma grade? So if you're a patient going online, can you expect it essentially to be compounded and a little unknown?
Yeah, I think it's mostly compounded or a majority. And one way to tell is, the brand name drugs are stamped with, manufacturer stamp. If the medication you're getting has the telehealth's logo stamped on it, it's compounded.
There you go.
Got it. That's
all right,
good.
So let's talk about the future. Where does it go from here? I mean, what's the next chapter for Viagra, PDE5s, this whole world? Where are we going to get to?
Well, Peter, talk about maybe delivery. Is there any other innovative delivery mechanisms for this?
We're talking a lot about beyond the erectile dysfunction. Well, we've started talking about that. And the drug tadalafil is going to have a big role in that. We haven't really talked about kind of the long half-life of that drug. Sildenafil is I tend to think of it, I'd be curious what you think, Paul, as kind of a, as needed. I want to have sex. I'm going to take a Viagra, wait 30 minutes and then, it's going to have its effect. Whereas tadalafil has like a very long half-life, as long in some studies as 36 hours. And so it stays in the bloodstream for quite a long time. So its ability to have, its effect for erections is prolonged. I guess the French call it the weekender because you take it on Friday and it lasts through the weekend.
The weekend pill.
But for some of these other indications they're talking about for cardiovascular health, for other things that are showing real interest beyond penile health, is it could have a really interesting use there because it stays in the bloodstream for so long. So you could take it low dose daily. And
the
have
last
it be
15 years of studies now, basically not randomized trials, which are the best data, but sort of retrospective trials. Sweden has done some of the best work. This medication was a cardiac medication that didn't work, but worked on erections, and now we're learning it actually does work on the heart too. To your point about the different formulations, the better actor in these studies has been tadalafil because it's in the bloodstream longer, but Viagra and those pills are only short time, so you may not getting the whole benefit. So a daily use of tadalafil gives you a blood level that could probably have cardiac benefit, right? But we've seen clearly now with these retrospective studies or longitudinal ones, diabetics have fewer events and men after heart attacks live longer. So it's a longevity pill. It appears to be associated with fewer cardiac events if you're on it, if you have a cardiac history, and it appears to prevent cardiac events if you don't have a cardiac history, and it keeps diabetics around longer. We're talking 20-30% relative, increases.
That's amazing.
So if you're thinking about longevity,
you should be taking
nothing touches this.
Explain to the audience, because brand names, just the difference is Viagra versus Cialis. Is Cialis the one that you're saying lasts for 36 hours, right?
That's
Just
correct.
In case. That's the popular brand name that lasts 36 hours. Okay, so are cardiologists going to start prescribing this? Is that what
They
you
may
think?
be already be doing it. I mean, a Cialis or tadalafil is used for pulmonary hypertension. It's FDA approved for that. So the same pill is used for pulmonary hypertension. So what I think is going on is that the nitric oxide pathway opens up the endothelial lining, the lining of the blood vessels, and the muscle relaxes throughout the body, especially in the heart, the lungs, and the penis. I mean, it's almost the perfect pill. If it put your hair on your head and kept your blood pressure down and gives you, I mean, it's like it gives you better
Where do I
erections.
sign up, guys?
This is a great, this is why it's gone haywire. So I'm stunned, but it is the new aspirin. This drug class is the new aspirin for longevity. And I think if you're going to do a couple of things in your life for longevity, this probably is one of the things you might do.
I have a question for you about that, because I know there was a very large meta-analysis looking at cardiovascular benefits of these drugs, very compelling, and a large cohort study. I was curious when I get to I sometimes always curious what how the authors write up their conclusions. So when you read a clinical trial, you see all the data, and then all this at the very end, the authors just kind of, I guess, spitball or make what they think this study means. And I was curious if they were going to mention what came to my mind when I read those studies, which is we're allowing people to have sexual activity, which is a good cardiovascular exercise. It probably makes you a happier person. It was never mentioned, actually. All that was mentioned was these kind of biochemical effects, which I think are real. I mean, I don't want to just say that that's not right, but I was struck by the fact that the patient's response to this in a lifestyle way may also actually be really beneficial for longevity. I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that.
With these design of these studies, which are not controlled trials for the most part or randomized, they're association studies for the most part, and causality you can't show. You can make assumptions about it, but you can't. So that's the bias. So for instance, one study in Sweden looked at men on post-MI, post-heart attack on these medications versus local treatments like alprostadil injectables. But those populations aren't the same, right? Because if you're on alprostadil, you probably won't respond to the pill. It's more serious, so your condition's more serious. So if you're living longer on the pills, it could be selection bias, the patients who use it and respond to it. And the patients on the pill may be having more sex, more exercise, and they're more fit, cardiovascularly fit. So you can't control for all that.
But that makes sense to somebody like me. I mean, you're literally just saying isn't it more healthy to be having more sex for just even cardiovascular exercise? Yes. And I think that links to where guys would say, is it going to give me a heart attack because I'm going to be, my sex is going to be longer, more energetic and more cardio, like pumping my heart and giving me, so.
I kind of think this goes back to the telehealth conversation as well, because, and I haven't worked with a telehealth company for these drugs, but it's what I hear is it's a pretty quick intake. You answer a few questions and then you get the prescription, basically. I mean, I can imagine going to Paul's clinic and he asks you 3 questions and writes you a prescription and sends you on your way. That seems absurd, but that's what's happening. And so I think it's all the more reason to really think about what this, erectile dysfunction, what this really means from a holistic standpoint, and working with a physician like Paul to look at your cardiovascular health. And so once all those questions have been answered, then you can feel very confident that you're going to get all the benefits and that you're not high risk and all those things. So I think it kind of reinforces that same conversation.
Yeah, one of my concerns about online use of the little blue pill and online acquiring it online is it's a missed opportunity to take care of men, because erectile dysfunction, as we discussed, is the canary in the coal mine for cardiac health. So if you have an erection problem, and this is well documented, if you have an erection problem in your 40s that's significant, your chance of dying of a cardiovascular event, stroke or heart attack, is 2.2 times baseline, which is the same as smoking. It's the same as a smoking history. And if you miss that opportunity in men and they're at that age, I mean, you can add years to their life by just figuring, do you know your cholesterol level? Did you know that your hemoglobin A1C, you're pre-diabetic? These are the golden opportunity mostly missed on online.
So in the future, let's say that we are fixing this issue and we are getting sperm analysis. We're going to see, and we're interested in our longevity, and we're seeing good doctors and good compound pharmacists. What's the future of compound pharmacy for humans? Will I get a custom pill delivered to me every day, and it's kind of helping my genetic code and my epigenetics and all these things, my history and all that? Is that the future, the custom pill for kind of all of it?
That is an excellent question. Who knows what the future holds? There's going to be innovation for sure in our space, and we see it. I think what's interesting from what I see is a lot of it's going back to the origins of medicine. I mean, Paul talks about stress and its effect on men's sexual health all the time on this podcast, which I think is so great, because it's one of those things that we know that stress is, chronic stress is bad for your health in lots of ways. And, addressing some of these core foundational things around nutrition, stress, going back to those basics, innovation will come in. I mean, I think actually the GLP-1s are pretty interesting in that regard. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting study and data come out about the role of GLP-1s and things well beyond weight loss. So we always want to treat the patient and meet them where they're at. And I also don't love the idea that, like, I'm just going to drug you up for your highest and best good. Actually, what I really would love to do is give you just the right thing so that you don't have to think about your drugs and you can think about living your life with a high level of health. So we'll see what comes, but there's a lot of innovation right now. And we'd love to be in the middle of that if it's appropriate for us. I mean, some of these innovations will come from the pharmaceutical industry, and maybe there'll be some opportunities to repurpose some older drugs, like these drugs now that are actually older, for things beyond erectile dysfunction. So there will definitely be things that are out there that we'll try to be involved in. And as long as it's, what's right for the patient and helping them achieve their highest and best health, then we'll be there.
One of the examples of how stress and these pills work is men will come in, young men. I'm, after my visit, convinced that it's probably not organic, so they don't have a metabolic hormonal problem, because that's like number one, is to make sure they're healthy, check labs and stuff. And then I will tell them, I think this is stress related. Well, I'm not stressed. And then you look at their lifestyle, and it's like they're in the Bay Area, they're in Hollywood, whatever, it's like, and I say, okay, well, let's do this. I'm going to give you this pill through Peter, and I want you to take it, chop it up and take the lowest working dose. And I give them a little speedometer dial on a piece of paper, and it's got a little gauge, and it says, the different doses, like the RPM.
Okay. And
I say, what's the lowest working dose that rescues your erection, right? And there's a green part and there's a red part, right? So if this man ends up taking the pill at, half the normal dose or quarter the normal dose, or nibbling it and gets a good erection, I said, this is stress. You're rescuable at a very low dose. Why don't you? So I don't care what you say. This is stress related. It's not an organic problem. So what are we going to do about your stress?
Yeah.
And so it's a way to get the erection back, but then convince them that it's their lifestyle that's doing it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Again, this show provides access to doctors like this that are seeing the value in medicines like Viagra and Cialis. It's Paul is advocating that it actually will in the future be a aspirin of the future. The help for cardiologists are going to be, whether it's your cardiologist or your reproductive urologist or your compound pharmacist, it's about leveling up the care and then eventually finding therapies that will make us healthier, right? So I want to know, how do people find you? How do people find you? Peter, how do they find Koshland Pharmacy?
Probably the best way is just on the web. Just check out our website. We do have some information about some of these medications that we do on our website. So that'd be a good place to start.
Which is koshlandpharmacy.com.
PHARM, like the first part of pharmacy.com. So koshlandpharm.com.
Great.
TheTurekClinic.com is a good place to go. You can go to the podcast and get links there. Turek on Men's Health is the blog. telehealth.com.
I encourage everybody to like, subscribe to the channels. And I'm saying forward it on. Share with your colleagues, with the people that you know may be struggling with heart issues, or I don't know. We don't go around just telling everybody who has ED and who doesn't, right? And I get that. But share this podcast, share the show, talk about the conversations that we're having that eventually will lead to men having healthier lives, healthier sex lives, and better fertility.
Yeah, I think men should know that your erection problem or sexual health problem could be a sign of a health issue. And it's a great way to get it early if you go get it checked out by a quality individual. And regarding the online medications for erectile dysfunction, it's buyer beware. And we talked about how hard it is to vet a compounder, but I think look at the pill. Does it have the pharma stamp on it, or does it have the compounder stamp on it? It can tell you whether it's the real deal or not, and don't assume you're getting the same thing.
Peter, any last words?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't want to just be hating on telehealth. I mean, it does one thing really well, is increases access to these medications, but I think it's very important for patients to understand the trade-offs that they're making for that easy, quick access to these drugs. And Paul's point, take it as an opportunity to just look at your overall health and, prevent some things that might be very consequential down the road. So,
love it. Peter, thanks for taking the time on a Saturday
Peter.
morning to talk with us, speak frankly to our people. Thanks for listening to the show. Appreciate that as well.
And thanks for being a great compounder, Peter.
Thank you, guys. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm not just saying that because you brought me on. I mean, it's really interesting information. I've learned a lot from it in my practice. So keep up the good work. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
All right, good show. Yeah,
Yes.
That was a good one. Episode 17, by the way. We're becoming veterans. Everybody, keep watching, keep subscribing, and I'll see you next time, Paul.
Great.
Thanks for joining the Talk with Turek podcast with hosts Paul Turek and Rob Clyde. Talk with Turek is produced and recorded in South Pasadena, California, in association with Galaxy Media Ventures. Executive producers are Jennifer Harris and Rob Clyde. Today's episode was produced by Max Flora, engineered and edited by Drew Unser. For more information or to book an appointment, whether in person or virtual, visit Dr. Turek online at theturekclinic.com or call 888-TUREK-MD. That's 888-887-3563. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube at Talk with Turek. And thanks for helping us advocate for men's fertility and sexual health.